The clock ticked past 5:42 a.m. A gray sliver of morning crept in through the window blinds of apartment 3B, casting light on the threadbare carpet and a man already awake. Sitting at the kitchen table, Daniel Cole stared into a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee black, no sugar. The coffee maker coughed once and went quiet. The fridge buzzed low and constant, like it was tired too. He rose slowly, careful not to make noise, and tiptoed to the corner where a backpack leaned against a second-hand chair. His fingers moved gently, packing a peanut butter sandwich thin, no jelly and half an apple wrapped in wax paper, no juice box, no snacks, just what was left. From the hallway, the soft rustle of blankets stirred. A little voice called out behind him. "Daddy?" He turned. Hazel stood at the bedroom door, rubbing one eye, clutching a stuffed giraffe, missing an ear. "Hey, sleepyhead," he whispered. "Breakfast is waiting." "Sort of," she smiled, her hair a mess, her face full of trust. He held out his arms, and she ran into them. He sat her down on the worn stool, placed the sandwich in front of her like it was a feast. "You made it like Mommy used to," she said. His smile cracked, but didn't fall as she ate. He buttoned his faded uniform shirt and tucked in the edges that didn't quite meet right. He scribbled on a napkin, folded it, and slid it into her bag. "Be brave today." She hugged him tight before they left. The wind was sharp as he opened the front door. Cold air rushed in. He paused. On the peeling wood frame was a sheet of paper, fluttering slightly, red letters. "Final notice, eviction." He tore it off slowly, folding it like something private. The sky had barely brightened when Daniel and Hazel reached the bus stop. A single bench sat beneath a sagging maple tree, its bare branches creaking in the wind. The sidewalk still glistened with frost, and their breath came out like smoke. Daniel knelt in front of her. "Your laces are loose again," he said gently. Hazel lifted one foot without protest. He tightened the little pink sneakers, scuffed but loved, and double-knotted them the way she liked. She grinned down at him. "Are you cold, Daddy?" "I'm made of winter," he teased, puffing out his chest. Hazel giggled, wrapping her arms tighter around her thin coat. Her backpack bounced as she fidgeted. "Is today still Pizza Friday?" she asked Dot. Daniel hesitated, then smiled. "It is if your teacher has good taste." Hazel's smile faded a little. "Did we have pizza at home last Friday?" He looked down at the cracked sidewalk, then back up. "I think we dreamed it. Dreams count, right?" She nodded slowly, biting her lip. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out, a small copper penny, warm from her hand. "I want you to take it today," she said. "What for?" "For luck. You need it more than me." He stared at her, throat tight. "You're sure?" Hazel pressed it into his palm. "It always works for me." The bus growled in the distance, its headlights cutting through the mist. She stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek. He whispered, "Be brave today. I will if you will." The doors hissed open. Hazel climbed aboard, waving from the window as the bus rolled away. Daniel closed his fingers around the penny, its warmth lingering. He turned to leave and felt something inside him. Tighten and rise that the downtown office building shimmered in glass and steel. But inside, the early morning halls were cold and hollow. Daniel pushed the janitor's cart along the polished marble floor, the soft squeak of wheels, the only sound breaking the silence. He wore the same faded shirt, now tucked a little neater, and the borrowed mop. Though older than the tile it touched, moved in steady rhythm, one line at a time, a quiet, unnoticed beat. He paused outside a glass conference room where suits talked in low voices. Their laughter didn't reach him. But he could feel it anyway, the way people feel rain behind a window. People like him don't want to work harder. One voice said casually. "Exactly," another replied. "They just want a handout and a sad story." Laughter, dismissive, sharp. Daniel blinked once, steadying himself, then moved on. He scrubbed a stubborn scuff on the tile by the elevator, not because anyone asked, but because he couldn't leave it there, not even for people who wouldn't see it. The lobby lights flickered overhead, his reflection caught in the brass door trim. Tired eyes, a man folding in at the edges. Clock out came at 9:01 a.m. He scanned his ID, badge, and stepped into the service hallway. The fluorescent light above buzzed and flickered. He pulled out his wallet to check the folded bus fare. He'd counted that morning the worn leather. slipped from his fingers, and hit the tile with a soft slap. He crouched quickly. A single crumpled dollar. 3 coins. No cards, no receipts. Just the folded penny she gave him, shining copper in the gray light. He gathered it up, pressing the wallet to his chest for a moment, not for money, but for what it held. Tomorrow was still far away. The city rain came down in sheets by late morning fast drops, drumming on sidewalks, bouncing off curbs, and streaking across the glass awning of the downtown tower. Daniel stood beneath that awning, hunched, watching the storm flood the streets like it was washing away the day. His coat, too thin for the weather, clung damp to his shoulders. His work shoes were soaked through, and his socks squished with every step. He waited at the bus stop across the street, but the bus didn't come. Not yet. Then he saw her, a woman in a navy blue suit, holding a broken umbrella that had turned inside out. She struggled with it at the edge of the sidewalk, her phone pressed to one ear, her heels clicking awkwardly as she tried to flag down a taxi. None stopped. Daniel watched for a moment, then looked down at his wallet. Still, only $1 inside. He crossed the street. She jumped as he approached. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm, respectful, eyes low. "Looks like you need a ride." She hesitated, sizing him up. Her eyes drifted to the janitor badge still clipped to his belt. "I can't get a cab," she muttered. "My ride canceled. And I've got a meeting in 10. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out the single soaked dollar, crumpled and soft at the edges. "It won't get you far," he said, pressing it into her hand. "But it'll get you moving." She stared at it. "Why would you?" "I don't have much," he said, backing away. "But I've been stranded before, and that's worse." Before she could respond, he turned, rain pouring down his back. Across the street, a taxi slowed. She stood frozen, watching him disappear into the storm. The taxi door opened with a hollow clunk. She hesitated before sliding in, glancing once more at the soaked man walking away without a coat, his shoulders slumped, his pace steady but slow. "Wait," she called out, her voice sharp against the rain. Daniel stopped, turned. She stepped toward him, holding the door open, her high heels splashing in puddles. The crumpled dollar was still in her hand. "Let me repay you," she said. "At least give me your name." He shook his head, water dripping from his chin. "No need. You don't know who I am." "Doesn't matter." She stared at him, incredulous. "You gave your last dollar to a stranger. Why?" Daniel exhaled, his breath fogging in the cold. "Because someday, someone gave me $1 when I didn't ask, and I still remember their face." He paused, "But I never got their name." She blinked, caught between confusion and quiet admiration. "You sure you don't want anything?" He gave a half smile, the kind that carries 100 worn-down hopes. "Just pay it forward," he said. Then he turned back toward the corner, rain soaking through every thread of his uniform. She stood still for a beat longer, then slipped into the taxi. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes followed Daniel's figure as it disappeared down the block, each step swallowed by rain and fog. Finally, she whispered, "Follow him," but it was too late. He was gone. Just a man with no name, a soaked back, and kindness he couldn't afford to give, but gave anyway. The apartment walls whispered in silence, except for the ticking clock and the faint hum of the fridge. Daniel hung his wet uniform over a chair by the heater, steam rising from the sleeves. His socks had been wrung out, drying slowly beside them. At the table, Hazel sat with her elbows on the edge, a napkin folded like a placemat in front of her. "Is it spaghetti night?" she asked, hopeful. Daniel smiled faintly, lifting a small plate from the counter. "It's a surprise night," he said. He placed it in front of her. 6 crackers, fanned out, like flower petals. Beside them, 2 apple slices shaped into crooked moons. She blinked, then beamed. "Fancy." Daniel sat down across from her, a glass of tap water in hand. "5-star chef," he said, raising it in a toast. "To what?" "To?" Stretching what you've got. She clinked her plastic cup against his. "Cheers." They nibbled in silence. Daniel watched her savor each bite like it was a banquet. She picked up one of the apple slices and held it in front of her face. "It's like a smile." Daniel nodded. "That's because you made it one." She tilted her head, studying him. "You look tired." "I'm just full," he lied. She leaned closer across the table. When Mommy was tired, you used to sing to her." He smiled weakly. "I'm a little out of tune lately." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her latest drawing, the two of them holding hands in front of a tall building. He was wearing a cape. "You're still a superhero to me," she said. He touched the paper, heart tight. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "Will we be okay, Daddy?" He didn't answer, just reached across the table and held her hand. The living room was dim now, lit only by the golden flicker of the hallway light. Hazel insisted. Stay on so dreams could see where to go. She was asleep on the couch, curled like a kitten. Her drawing still in her hand, Daniel sat nearby, elbows on knees, phone cradled in both hands, like it might crack if he moved too quickly. The screen was blank. No missed calls. No voicemails. He tapped the icon again. "This is Daniel Kolev. A message and I'll call you right back." Back when he believed in right back. He pressed *1. "You have no new messages." He lowered the phone, resting it against his forehead. Silence swallowed the room. Then came the memory, flashes of job interviews, stiff shirts, borrowed ties, the oversmile of desperation. The manager who glanced at his resume once, then said, "We're going with someone with ... recent experience, the temp agency that promised callbacks, the warehouse that said, we'll let you know." The automated rejection emails, the ones that didn't even bother. He had applied everywhere. Gas stations, mailrooms, delivery routes, night shifts. Pride had left the building weeks ago, but the phone never rang. He stared out the window now, watching raindrops race down the glass. Each one a second, each one a maybe. The screen lit up again. Hope spiked in his chest. But it wasn't a call, just a message. From landlord final notice unit 3B, He didn't flinch. He just locked the screen and set the phone face down. Then he looked over at Hazel, still sleeping. "Still dreaming," he whispered to no one. "Just one more break. Just one." And the silence answered back, "Morning came too soon." Hazel was already dressed when Daniel emerged from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes. She wore her favorite hoodie, the one with a faded rainbow and a tiny hole near the elbow. Her backpack looked bigger than her. "I packed my own bag today," she said proudly, zipping it up. "Even the note." Daniel smiled. "You're getting too grown up on me. I'm still little, just better at mornings." He sat at the table watching her adjust the straps. "You're better at a lot of things," he said softly. Hazel turned, tilting her head. "Are you sad again?" He hesitated, then nodded. A little, she walked over and climbed into his lap. He held her like a puzzle piece that finally fit. "I wish I could fix things for you," she whispered. "You do?" he said. "Every single day." She reached into the front pocket of her backpack and pulled out a folded paper. "I made something." He opened it slowly. It was a drawing, carefully colored, full of tiny details. It showed him standing tall in a cape and boots, mopping a floor made of stars. Hazel stood beside him, holding a balloon dot at the top, in big pink letters. "My dad saves the world." His throat tightened. "This is ... amazing." "You don't need a phone call," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "You already have a job." Being my hero, he didn't know what to say, so he held her tighter. Then a knock at the door, not a pounding, not urgent, just 3 soft, certain taps. They both froze. Daniel slowly looked up. Hazel whispered, "Is it the pizza guy?" But Daniel knew better, and something in him braced. Daniel opened the door slowly, unsure of what he expected. It wasn't her, the same woman from the rain, the one with the broken umbrella. The sharp eyes, the polished heels, now replaced by simple flats, stood on his porch, just a leather satchel over her shoulder, and rain droplets clinging to the ends of her hair. She looked surprised too, as if she didn't expect the door to actually open. "Mr. Colt?" she asked, clearing her throat. Hazel peeked out from behind him, whispering, "Is that the taxi lady?" Daniel turned, gently motioning her back, then stepped outside and closed the door behind him. The hallway was narrow, the air thick with boiled potatoes from another unit. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied. "I'm sorry," he said cautiously. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," she replied quickly. "Quite the opposite." Daniel waited. "I spent the last 2 days trying to find you. No last name, no receipt. Just your janitor badge and the street you walked down. He folded his arms. Why? Because, she said, holding up the same crumpled dollar he had given her, now dried and flattened. No one does what you did. Not anymore. It wasn't that big of a deal. To you, maybe, she said, but you changed the way I saw the world for a minute. Daniel stayed quiet, unsure where this was going. She inhaled slowly, her voice softer now. My name is Claire Devereux. I'm the director of operations at Lexington Towers. He blinked. I want to offer you something, she said from her bag. She pulled out a business card, sleek, clean, gold lettering, and handed it to him. Daniel stared at the card, like it might vanish. It was heavy, expensive paper, the kind you don't hand to just anyone, her name embossed in gold. Claire Devereux, Director of Operations. Lexington Towers. He turned it over. A direct phone number. No extension. No assistant. Claire shifted slightly, watching his expression. I meant what I said, she told him. We have an opening. Short-staffed maintenance crew. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. And it's yours if you want it. Daniel looked up, skeptical. You just hand out jobs like candy now. She smiled faintly. Only to people who give their last dollar in the rain. He scoffed under his breath. Look, I appreciate this, but I've been through this song before. People say kind things, then they disappear. I'm not disappearing, she said. I came to your door. That doesn't mean this isn't a setup. Pity gig, charity. Claire's face softened. It's not charity. It's a doorway. Whether you walk through it, that's up to you. Daniel nodded slowly, unreadable. I've got a kid, he said. I don't do maybes. She looked him square in the eye. Then call me when you're ready for something solid. She turned, walked down the hallway without waiting for a thank you. Her heels didn't echo this time, just faded into the sound of a neighbor's TV. Daniel looked at the card one last time, then walked back inside. Past Hazel still eating cereal dry from the box. He moved to the kitchen, opened the drawer by the sink, and dropped the card in the trash, not harshly. Not angry, just ... doubtfully. Nice story, he muttered. Not real life. The room had gone quiet again, the kind of quiet that pressed into the walls like loneliness. Hazel finished her dry cereal, crunching thoughtfully while swinging her feet beneath the table. Daniel washed a cracked dish at the sink, his shoulders hunched, eyes distant. She watched him for a moment. Was that the lady from the rain? Daniel nodded. Yeah. Did she say thank you? He nodded again, this time slower. Then why do you look like you lost something? Daniel sighed and dried his hands on a towel that used to be white. Because people don't just show up offering magic fixes, Hazel. Life doesn't work like fairy tales. She hopped off the chair and walked to the trash bin. Quietly, without asking, she opened the drawer. Her little fingers reached in and pulled out the gold-edged business card. She turned it over, studying the fancy letters like they were a secret code. Lexing ... ton ... She sounded it out, then looked up. What's this? Nothing, Daniel said, reaching for it. Just a dream wrapped in a trick. Hazel held it behind her back like a stubborn squirrel hiding a nut. Maybe it's not a trick. He crouched to her level, tired, but kind. Hazel, sometimes people say things they don't mean, and I can't afford to believe in things that vanish. She tilted her head, thoughtful. But sometimes, she whispered, things show up when you really need them. Right? Daniel didn't answer. Hazel held out the card slowly. Maybe she's your angel, Daddy. He blinked, then took the card back, holding it differently this time, not with disbelief, but with something quieter, something closer to maybe that night. Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, card in one hand, phone in the other. The apartment was dark, except for the soft glow of a lamp. Hazel insisted on keeping on, so dreams don't get lost. He stared at the number. Then he dialed. It rang once, twice. Claire Devereux answered a clear, steady voice. This is Daniel Cole, from the other day. I was hoping you'd call. He paused. I wasn't sure. Most good men aren't. Her voice was calm, but there was something in it. Something solid. Do you want to come in? She asked. I'm not sure what the job even is. Start with a conversation. Tomorrow, 9:30, I'll block time for you. He hesitated. I have a daughter, he said. I need to drop her at school. I'll see you at 10, she adjusted without pause. Front desk will expect you. Daniel let the silence hang a moment. Then, all right. She didn't say goodbye. Just, I'm glad you called. He hung up slowly. Hazel sat up from the couch, sleep still in her eyes. Was that her? He nodded. She smiled like it meant more than he let on. So, are you gonna go? Yeah, he whispered. I think I am. She leaped off the blanket pile. What are you gonna wear? He looked toward the closet. 3 shirts, 2 stained, 1 missing a button. His only slacks were frayed at the ankles. His smile faded. That, he muttered, might be a problem. Hazel looked up at him. Eyes wide. Maybe we can borrow magic. The neighbor down the hall was named Carl, a retired bus driver with a belly like a drum and a laugh that echoed through the vents. When Daniel knocked, he opened the door in a tank top and pajama pants printed with cartoon squirrels. Job interview, Carl asked, before Daniel even said a word. Daniel nodded, sheepish. You wouldn't happen to have a decent shirt? Carl's laugh rumbled. Got just the thing. Only wore it once, wetting her side of the family. He disappeared into his closet and returned with a light blue button-down 2 sizes too big. Sleeves like sails, collar wide enough to land a plane. Daniel took it with both hands. Perfect. Back in the apartment, he changed into the shirt while Hazel stood on a chair. Her arms crossed like a fashion judge. Flappy, she said. Daniel tugged at the cuffs. Better than a t-shirt with spaghetti stains. Hazel disappeared into her backpack and came back with a crumpled sheet of craft paper, scissors, and tape. I got an idea. She folded and twisted until she'd crafted a little paper flower, pink and wrinkled but full of love. Hold still, she said, taping it to the collar. Now it looks like a fancy guy's shirt. Daniel looked at himself in the mirror. Oversized shirt, paper flower, hair still damp from the quick-sink rinse. He looked ridiculous. But somehow, he looked ready. Hazel grinned. You look like the president. He laughed. Of what? A kindergarten. She shrugged. Just go be cool. He picked up his wallet. Still thin, but heavier now with something else. The clock ticked toward 10, Lexington. Towers rose like a mirror into the morning sky. Sleek, cold, precise. Daniel stood outside for a full minute before stepping in. The revolving door spinning him into another world. The lobby was all marble and silence. Glass walls stretched floor to ceiling. A sculpture of silver ribbons twisted mid-air near the center, catching reflections from every angle. People in tailored suits moved like streams around him, fast, smooth, certain. Daniel adjusted the too big shirt. His paper flower sagged slightly. The receptionist glanced up, lips tight. Can I help you? Daniel Cole, I have a 10 o'clock. With Claire Vero, her eyes flicked to the monitor. Pause. 1 moment. She tapped her headset, whispered something. 2 women walked by, heels tapping like ticking clocks. One whispered, not quietly enough. Did he get lost? The other smirked. Must be maintenance. Or lost a bet. Daniel shifted his weight, but said nothing. The shirt felt even bigger now than elevator chime. The doors slid open, and Claire stepped out. No assistant, no clipboard, just her. She wore a crisp white blouse, hair tied back. Not a drop of makeup, confident without effort. She walked straight to him, unfazed by the stares. Mr. Cole, she said, offering her hand. Right on time, he stood a little straighter. Thank you for meeting me. Her eyes flicked to the flower on his collar, then back to his face. I like the touch of color, she said. He smiled, barely dot around them. Murmurs stirred like wind, but Claire didn't flinch. She led him toward the elevators. Every step quiet but certain, and Daniel followed, still out of place, but not out of chances. The office was smaller than Daniel expected. No glass walls, no gold plaques, just a desk, a bookshelf, and a window overlooking the city skyline, blurred by morning haze. Claire gestured to the chair opposite hers. No resume needed, she said. Settling in, Daniel sat slowly, adjusting the oversized sleeves that kept slipping past his wrists. I'm not sure what to say, he admitted. She opened a notepad but didn't write. I'm not hiring a speech, she said. I'm hiring a person, he blinked. You don't want to know my experience. I already know it. I watched the footage. He raised an eyebrow. You picked up trash that wasn't yours. Cleaned floors no one asked you to. stayed late to finish the job when others didn't. Daniel looked down at his hands. That's not special. That's survival. Claire nodded. And that's exactly what most places miss. I'm not looking for flash. I'm looking for people who treat small things like they matter. He was quiet, unsure how to respond. She leaned forward, tone softening. You're raising a daughter alone. That tells me more about your character than any degree ever could. Daniel swallowed. I won't lie to you. I've struggled. I'm still struggling. She didn't flinch. You're here. That counts. The silence between them was thick, but not awkward, like something was being weighed. Quietly, honestly. Then Claire closed her notepad, stood up, and extended her hand again. Can you start Monday? Daniel stared at her. The paper flower on his collar crinkled as he rose to his feet. I can, she smiled, not polite, not forced, real. And in that moment, Daniel didn't feel like a janitor or a charity case. He felt like a man being seen. The elevator hummed as it descended. Soft music playing, a piano piece Daniel didn't recognize, but something about the chords pulled at him anyway. Claire stood beside him, silent. Calm. When the doors opened, they stepped into a different world. No marble floors here, just gray tile, stacked boxes, and the faint scent of bleach. Claire led him past an office supply closet and a break room with 2 vending machines, one out of order. Finally, she stopped at a narrow door. She opened it. Inside mops, brooms, industrial buckets, racks of uniforms, and a small cubby shelf labeled with names. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. This, she said, is where you'll start. Daniel stood still, taking it in. A part of him had hoped foolishly that this might be something more. A desk, a change, something beyond where he'd been before. But this was a janitor's closet. Claire watched him carefully. Without speaking, he stared at the neatly folded uniforms, blue stiff, with name tags that could be peeled and replaced. His fingers grazed one of the hooks on the wall, still warm from someone else's jacket. Is this what you offered? He asked quietly. It's where we begin, she replied. Daniel looked around the small space again. No windows, no prestige. Just tools. Just work done. Then he nodded. I've started from worse. Claire didn't smile, but her eyes softened. She reached into her bag, pulled out a badge already printed. D. Coal Facility Staff. Locker 7 is yours, she said. He took the badge slowly. Behind her composed face, she was watching not just what he said, but what he didn't. And what she saw was a man who'd swallowed disappointment without. Losing his dignity, Daniel sat alone on the bench outside the locker room, badge in one hand, uniform in the other. The hallway was quiet. Just the distant hum of fluorescent lights and the faint clatter of someone pushing a cleaning cart 2 floors up. He stared at the blue shirt folded across his lap, nearly identical to the one he'd worn the day before. Different company, same fabric, same weight. His thumb ran across the embroidered patch, Lexington Towers. Facilities, it wasn't what he dreamed of. It wasn't a suit. It wasn't an office. It wasn't new, but it was honest. He looked at the door half open, where Claire had left him without pressure. Just space. He thought about Hazel, her drawings, her toast-sized dinners, her big questions in a small voice. He thought about the eviction notice folded neatly under the sink, the silence of job apps unanswered. Then he thought about the floor he'd mop, the people who might look past him, the words they might say when they thought he couldn't hear. And still he pulled the uniform on, no music, no applause, just the sound of fabric stretching across tired shoulders. He clipped the badge to his chest, adjusted the collar, and stood. Claire was waiting just beyond the hallway, tablet in hand. She didn't say anything when he stepped out, but she noticed his sleeves were rolled, his chin was high, his walk said yes before he ever did. She gave a single nod, almost imperceptible, and in her eyes, not pity, not surprise, but approval, the kind reserved for people who choose to stay even when they had every reason to leave. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Daniel stepped in, now wearing the uniform properly. Fresh badge, polished shoes from Carl's old collection, and sleeves rolled just enough to feel like his own skin again. He stood alone for a moment, watching the numbers above the door descend. Then, just before the doors closed, a hand reached in. A man entered, tall, perfect hair, immaculate charcoal suit, the kind of cologne that claimed space. He looked Daniel up and down, then pressed the button for the executive floor without a word. Daniel nodded. Politely, the man didn't return it. The silence stretched. "First day." "Something like that," Daniel replied. The man smirked faintly. "Let me guess. Janitorial?" Daniel nodded once. "Calm. Facilities." The man's smirk widened, but his eyes never softened. "Well, just don't leave streaks on the marble. Some of us still notice the details." Daniel looked straight ahead. "So do I." The elevator ticked past floor 22. Then the man added, like it was a throwaway line, "They've been lowering hiring standards lately." Daniel didn't respond, but he didn't flinch either. The elevator slowed. Phone already to his ear, Daniel stayed in the lift. Riding down further, as the doors began to close, he looked up instinctively and saw her Claire standing on the balcony above. Watching, she didn't smile. She didn't wave, but she saw the whole thing. And Daniel knew it. The door shut. He exhaled, shoulders steady back to the floors. Back to the work, but not the same man who rode up. The basement hall smelled like lemon. Cleaner and old dust, a scent Daniel knew by heart. The same smell from a dozen jobs before, the kind that clung to hands no matter how often you washed them. Locker number 7 creaked when he opened it. Inside was a folded uniform shirt, a small tin of mints, and a broom leaning gently against the sidewall wooden handle. Worn smooth from years of use, he ran his fingers over the grip. Familiar, heavy in a way. That said, this won't impress anyone, but it will do the job. He slipped the shirt on, checked the seams, adjusted the collar. In the break room nearby, 2 other staffers chatted in Spanish. One nodded at him as he passed, not unfriendly. Just curious, Daniel began his shift in the lower lobby, the back entrance where deliveries came in, and executives never passed through. His cart squeaked slightly, wheels loose on the right side. He mopped in smooth lines, precise and rhythmic. No wasted movement, just control. Like a quiet song, only his muscles remembered. No, one clapped. No one noticed, but the tile gleamed. And for a man like Daniel, that was enough. He returned to the locker at the end of the shift, rolling his shoulders, hands sore but steady, as he reached for his water bottle. Something fluttered to the floor. A small square of paper, folded tight, no name. He opened it slowly. In soft black ink it read, "You are seen." He stood still, not a word out loud, but his heart. It made a sound, one he hadn't heard in a long time. Daniel stood in front of his locker, the note still in his hand. It wasn't typed. It wasn't corporate. Just for words, handwritten on plain paper, no signature, "You are seen." He read it again. Then again, for a man used to being invisible, it felt heavier than a promotion. He tucked the note gently into his wallet, right next to Hazel's penny, to quiet treasures later that day. As he wiped down brass railings near the service elevators, a soft voice called from behind, "Mr. Cole." He turned. It was a young woman in a crisp blue polo with a building's emblem stitched on the chest. She held a tablet, her expression unreadable. "I was asked to show you something." Daniel followed her into a security room lined with monitors. Dozens of camera feeds blinked quietly, showing entrances, stairwells, loading docks, a maze of lives moving in and out. She tapped a screen. "Rewound last Thursday," she said. Footage played. There he was, Daniel mopping the floor in the early hours. Long before anyone else arrived, then, something small, a trash can knocked over by a courier's bag. Papers scattered down the hall. The courier didn't stop, but Daniel did. He bent down, not once, but twice, gathering every sheet. He even straightened the bin. Then he looked around, not for praise, but to make sure no one tripped. The footage paused. Daniel swallowed. "Why are you showing me this?" The woman smiled slightly, because some people think no one's watching. She tapped the screen once more, and there, in a different frame, Claire. Standing in the background, watching him pick up what wasn't his, the rooftop break area wasn't exactly scenic. Just a flat space near the HVAC unit with 2 faded benches and a vending machine that always ate quarters. But the air was clean, and the city stretched far and wide beyond the edge of the railing. Daniel sat with his lunch, a hard-boiled egg, a bruised banana, and crackers from home. He ate slowly, sleeves rolled, eyes watching clouds crawl across the skyline. The door creaked. He looked up, and there she was. Claire not in heels today. Just flats and a navy sweater. No assistant behind her. No clipboard. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. He gestured to the spot beside him. "It's not reserved." She smiled faintly and sat, placing a small container on her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of city noise rose and fell below. Distant sirens, car horns. The heartbeat of things continuing. She asked. Daniel shrugged. "It's quiet, and no one tells you where to sit." She peeled the lid off her salad. "Fair," he looked at her sideways. "Did you really watch that footage? The trash thing?" She nodded without looking up. "Every second." "And that means something. It means everything," she said. "How people act when no one's watching, that's the kind of person I hire." He looked down at his hands. Quiet dot. Claire leaned forward, picking a grape out of her salad. Most people just want to be seen. "Daniel," he nodded slowly. "Sometimes being invisible is safer." She paused, then asked gently, "Tell me about your daughter." Daniel blinked, then looked out at the horizon. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "She's the best part of me." Daniel's eyes softened as the words began to form, slow at first, like a memory knocking gently before being let in. "She's 8, he said. "Hazel, sharp as a pin, big imagination, always drawing something or turning a spoon into a spaceship." Claire smiled gently, chewing in silence. He continued, the rooftop breeze tugging at the edge of his shirt. "She didn't talk much after her mom passed, just kind of folded in on herself." Claire's expression shifted, not pity, but presence. "She used to play piano," he added. "Hazel, I mean. Learned sitting beside her mom on this rickety bench in our old apartment. The keys were chipped. Middle C was stuck, but they played anyway. Every night, his eyes drifted upward, as if searching the sky for the sound. After she died, he said, quieter now, Hazel wouldn't touch the keys. Said it made her feel too close and too far at the same time." Claire's hand tightened slightly on her fork. Daniel's voice dropped lower. "I sold the piano a few months later. We needed groceries, rent, shoes." The wind moved between them, soft, careful. "I still hear it sometimes," he admitted, voice nearly breaking. "That song they used to hum together, something made up. I can't even play it right, but Hazel, she remembers every note." Claire didn't didn't try to fix the silence. She just sat with him in it, like someone who understood that pain doesn't need fixing, it just needs room. Daniel exhaled and looked over. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel ashamed of the story. He just felt human. And that was something new. 2 days later, Daniel found a small envelope sitting inside locker number 7. It wasn't official, no logo, no printed font, just his name, written in pen, in clear, graceful handwriting. He opened it slowly. Inside was a card, cream-colored, embossed at the edges. Lexington Towers holiday celebration. Friday, 6 p.m., rooftop ballroom, no mention of staff only. No fine print, just one extra sentence scribbled at the bottom in the same familiar pen. "You're my guest." Claire Daniel stared at the card for a long time in the break room. Over microwaved noodles and conversation he wasn't part of. He reread it 3 more times, that evening just before leaving. He passed Claire in the hall outside the elevator. She was checking her phone, typing something fast with one hand. She looked up. "You got it?" He nodded, card tucked in his front pocket like a secret. "I wasn't sure if you meant to send this to ... me. I did. I'm not exactly ... black tie material." Claire shrugged. "Neither am I." Daniel laughed under his breath. "Is this part of the job?" "No," she said softly. "This part's personal." That caught him. He looked at her, unsure of what to say. She added, "I thought you might like to bring your daughter. We'll have a piano upstairs. Some of the staff bring family. Hazel might enjoy it." Daniel blinked, startled. "How did you? You told me her name," she replied. "That's all I needed." She stepped into the elevator, doors closing between them. But Daniel stayed, frozen in the hallway, holding the card, holding the weight of something that felt dangerously close to hope. Hazel stood barefoot on the couch, arms spread wide, pretending to be an airplane. When the knock came at the door, Daniel opened it cautiously. No one was there, just a small white box on the mat. No name, just a satin ribbon tied in a perfect bow. He brought it inside, setting it gently on the table. Hazel tiptoed over. "Is it for me?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Only one way to find out." She tugged at the ribbon, peeling it back. The lid came off with a whisper. Inside lay a soft blue dress, folded neatly, shimmering faintly in the light. The fabric danced like water. Tiny embroidered stars traced the collar. Hazel gasped. "It's like a princess dress," she whispered. Daniel lifted it carefully. It was her size, perfectly her size. His voice caught. Hazel twirled in a circle, just imagining it on. "Can I wear it to the party?" Daniel hesitated, eyes scanning the box for a tag, a label, anything. Nothing. She held the dress to her chest. "Do you think?" "Mommy sent it." He looked at her, startled. Hazel's eyes were wide with something more than wonder, something like longing. "Is this from Mommy?" she whispered again. Daniel knelt down, smoothing her hair back. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "I don't think so." Her smile wavered. "Then who?" He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because maybe it didn't matter. He touched the fabric again. Light, delicate, beautiful. Whoever sent it had seen his daughter, and that was enough. The rooftop ballroom shimmered like a page torn from a magazine. String lights arched overhead, like stars strung in order. Music floated soft and slow, and glasses clinked beneath laughter that echoed between marble pillars. Daniel stepped off the elevator, hand gently resting on Hazel's shoulder. She wore the blue dress. He wore Carl's second-best shirt, pressed, tucked in, and slightly too tight at the neck. They looked out of place, and they knew it. Clusters of people, in tailored suits and cocktail dresses, turned and glanced. Not cruel, not quite, but with that quiet kind of curiosity that comes with uncertainty. Some smiled politely. Some didn single quotes. One man leaned toward his colleague and whispered, "They let staff bring kids now." Hazel tugged at Daniel's hand. "Are we allowed to be here?" He knelt beside her, adjusting the sleeve of her dress. "We were invited," he said. "We belong." Still, he didn't feel it. Not until she walked in. Claire appeared at the top of the staircase, radiant in a black gown. Hair swept back, nothing flashy, just confident, and she walked straight toward them. No hesitation, no detour. People stepped aside. "Daniel," she said warmly. "Hazel." Hazel smiled shyly. "Hi." Claire turned to the small crowd that had subtly circled around. "Everyone," she said clearly. "This is Daniel Cole. He's a recent addition to our facilities team and the kind of person who holds this building up when no one's watching." Daniel blinked. Stunned, someone clapped. Then another. He didn't know where to look, but Hazel did. She looked straight at Claire and whispered, "She sees you," and for once, Daniel believed it. The music shifted to something slower, softer, a string quartet, now playing near the back of the ballroom. Daniel and Hazel stood near the refreshment table, paper napkins in hand, sipping punch that tasted like bubbles and fruit. He was still trying to settle the applause in his chest when Hazel tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, pointing across the room. "Look, in the far corner." Half hidden behind a pillar and a velvet curtain, sat an upright piano, glossy keys, a single bench in front of it. No one sat there. No one played. Just silence, like it was waiting. Daniel followed her gaze. The sight of the piano hit like a memory, thick and aching. Hazel stepped closer, the hem of her dress brushing the floor. Her shoes were too small for heels, but she moved like someone who belonged on a stage. She stood just a few feet from the piano, eyes wide, lips parted slightly. Daniel approached slowly, his heart thudding louder than the music. "It looks like ours," Hazel whispered. He nodded. "A little shinier." Hazel turned to him, voice suddenly very small. "Do you think it remembers the song?" He swallowed. Maybe. A moment passed, one of those moments too delicate to break with noise. Then Hazel looked up at him with the courage only children know how to carry. The room didn't notice. Not yet, but Daniel did. He knelt, fixing a loose strap on her dress. "If you want to," he said. "You can." Hazel turned back to the piano, and the room, though it didn't know it yet, it was about to fall silent. Hazel slid onto the bench like she belonged there, her tiny feet not even reaching the pedals. For a breathless moment, She didn't move. Then slowly, her fingers hovered above the keys, uncertain at first, then sure. Like memory had been waiting beneath her skin all along. The first note rang out, soft, simple, a hesitant whisper. Then another. Then the melody. It wasn't Mozart. It wasn't Bach. It was hers, a song without name, a lullaby only 2 people had ever known, a tune her mother had hummed at bedtime, then taught in pieces, night after night, and now it returned. The ballroom had been buzzing with light conversation and the clinking of glasses, until the music cut through, one by one, voices faded, heads turned, laughter stilled by the second chorus. Silence had wrapped around the room like velvet. Hazel's fingers moved with delicate confidence, not perfect, but true. Her eyes closed, her chin lifted. She played like someone remembering love. Daniel stood nearby, unmoving, his throat tight, eyes wet. Claire had stepped back into the crowd, watching, listening, hands folded. An older man near the back lowered his glass, eyes narrowing in recognition. He leaned toward a younger colleague. That song, what? I've heard it before. Where? The man didn't answer. He just watched the girl, a frown blooming on his face like a question he hadn't asked in years. As Hazel played the final note, her fingers lingered on the keys. No applause, just stillness, reverence, and then a single clap, then 2, then the room erupted, not in chaos, but in awe. Hazel turned to look for her father and found him already watching with the eyes of a man who finally believed in miracles again. The next morning, Daniel was delivering new paper towels to the executive floor's restrooms. He didn't mind the task. It gave him a quiet moment away from the noise, a chance to move unseen. But something made him pause as he passed the east hallway. A row of framed photos lined the wall, portraits of donors, founders and past executives of Lexington Towers. Most were stiff smiles and firm handshakes, moments frozen in time. But one photo stopped him, cold, black and white, smaller than the others, set in a narrow silver frame. It wasn't posed, it wasn't polished, it was real. A young woman sat at a piano, her hair loose, her back slightly hunched over the keys. Standing beside her was a teenage girl, watching closely, eyes full of light. Daniel stepped closer. His hand trembled. The woman at the piano was his wife, younger but unmistakable, and the girl beside her, Claire, his breath caught. They weren't just student and teacher, they were bonded. He stared at the photo, as if time might rewind if he looked hard enough. He hadn't known Claire back then, had never heard her name, but his wife had, and clearly, she had made a mark. For a moment, Daniel stood utterly still. How long had Claire carried that memory? How long had she known who he was? Not just the man from the rain, but the husband left behind by the woman who taught her music. He looked around. No one was watching, but the weight of the connection pressed. Heavy on his chest, he had thought. The kindness began in a storm. But maybe it started at a piano long before that. Daniel waited outside Claire's office after his shift, not pacing. Just still, like a question finally ready to be asked. When her door opened, she stepped out with a tablet in hand, surprised to see him standing there. "Daniel," she said gently, "everything all right?" He nodded once. "Can we talk?" She glanced at the clock, then back at him. Of course, they sat in her office, same room, same window view. But the air was different now. Daniel held the photo from the hallway in his hands. She saw it immediately. "You knew her?" he said quietly. Claire didn't pretend. She leaned back, hands in her lap. "ID'd? For how long?" Claire's voice softened. "Your wife taught me piano when I was 13. I was awkward, quiet, always second-guessing myself. She never did. She saw something in me before I ever saw it in myself." Daniel swallowed hard. "You didn't tell me. I didn't want you to think that's why I offered you the job." He looked down. "Wasn't it?" Claire leaned forward. "No. I didn't know you were her husband until after that first day, when I watched the footage and saw your name on the locker." Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't look away. "I came back because you gave your last dollar to a stranger, not because of who your wife was." Daniel held her gaze. "Then why help me at all?" She smiled sadly. "Because she once told me, my husband is the kind of man who gives even when he's empty." He didn't speak. She said you'd never stop being kind. The room fell into silence again, not tension, just truth. And in that moment, neither one of them felt like strangers anymore. By Thursday, the whispers had started. Daniel could feel them in the pause between greetings, in the shift of conversations as he entered a room. He wasn't paranoid, just practiced. You learn to read silence when you've lived inside it. In the break room, 2 junior associates huddled near the coffee machine. One murmured, the janitor. Yeah, rumor is the boss had dinner with him. Dinner, please. I heard he's her cousin. No, she's just feeling sorry for him. You know how Claire is always rescuing strays. Daniel pretended not to hear, pretended to focus on organizing paper towel shipments. Pretended it didn't matter, but it did. By noon, he found his name missing from the team board where daily cleaning zones were assigned by 2. He was asked to redo a floor he'd already polished spotless. And by 4, a man in a buttoned shirt and flat tone approached him in the hallway. Mr. Cole, can you stop by conference room B&10? Daniel nodded. No explanation given. Just that strange chill of a meeting you didn't ask for. He entered the room early. Sat at the far end of the long glass table. No water. No welcome. The building manager walked in, stiff posture, tight smile. A second HR rep followed, holding a notepad. Daniel sat upright, heart steady. He'd seen this setup before, more times than he wanted to remember. But this time, he wasn't scared, just tired of being misread. The manager sat down across from him and cleared his throat. There's been some concerns raised, Mr. Cole? Daniel nodded slowly. Of course, there have. The conference room felt colder than it should have. Daniel sat with both hands folded, shoulders square, listening as the manager adjusted his tie gesture that said discomfort more than professionalism. There's been some conversation around favoritism. The manager began carefully choosing each word, concerns that certain staff members are being elevated outside of standard procedure. Daniel said nothing. He didn't have to. He'd heard this kind of language before, polite on the surface, sharp underneath. We understand that Ms. Devru has shown you personal interest, the HR rep added. Her tone was smooth. To smooth. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Is kindness against policy now? The manager offered a tight smile. Of course not. But when someone new, especially from a different background, is seen advancing too quickly, it can create tension. Daniel leaned back. I didn't ask for special treatment. Nonetheless, the HR rep continued, we've decided to pause your pending promotion. We feel it's best to revisit it at a later date. Daniel didn't blink. So the job I didn't apply for, that I didn't expect, is now off the table because people are uncomfortable. The manager nodded. Some think you're not qualified. A pause, then he added, quietly, even if your work says otherwise. Daniel exhaled slowly. So I do the job. I go unnoticed. That's fine. But the moment I'm seen, it's a problem. No one responded. He stood, quietly, folding his badge back onto his shirt. Let me know when this place is ready for the kind of man who doesn't need to be invisible to be accepted. He turned to leave. The note in his wallet felt heavier than ever now. You are seen, but not by everyone, not yet. The bus ride home was quiet. Daniel stared out the window, the city rushing by in blurs of gray and gold. His hands were still, but his mind wasn't. The conference room, the measured voices, the unspoken message. You can mop the floors, but don't you dare climb the stairs. At home, Hazel was already in her pajamas, crayons scattered around her like a field of color. She looked up when he walked in. Hey, Daddy, she chirped. He tried to smile, but it wavered halfway. He slipped off his shoes, sat beside her on the floor. She studied his face carefully. You're sad, she said. No, he lied gently. Just tired. Hazel shook her head. You look like the days when Mommy used to sit in the bathtub too long. Daniel blinked. She always said she was just tired too, Hazel added, her voice smaller now. He looked down, took her hand. I had a hard day, that's all. She reached behind her and pulled out a piece of paper, folded neatly, covered in stars. She opened it and placed it in his lap, a drawing, him and Hazel standing on a stage. Lights pouring down like spotlights. He wore a superhero cape. She sat at a piano. The crowd beneath them was all smiles. Big, bright, clapping hands. This is us, she whispered. One day, Daniel stared at it, throat tight. "You still believe that?" he asked. Hazel nodded like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and in that moment, surrounded by crayons and courage. Daniel didn't need a corner office. He just needed to make that picture real. Claire sat alone in her office, long after the building quieted down. The party lights had long been taken down. Staff had gone home, but the tension still lingered. Rumors echo louder in empty rooms. She stared at the message on her screen. Subject, Daniel Cole. Reconsideration requested, a polite nudge from HR, laced with pressure, dressed as professionalism. She closed the email. Slowly, then opened a folder on her desktop marked Internal Surveillance Incidents. A sea of thumbnails. Camera feeds. She scanned quickly, scrolling past TIMESTAMPS until she found it footage from 2 weeks ago. It showed Daniel arriving early again before sunrise. No one asked him to. No one knew. But there he was, fixing the wheel on a supply cart, replacing a broken mop handle, refilling a coffee pot left empty in the break room. Quiet things. Small things, but meaningful. She clicked deeper. Another day, Daniel helping the overnight guard bring in deliveries. Another, folding uniforms in the supply room so the next guy wouldn't start the day in chaos. Another, picking up a child's toy in the lobby and placing it gently on the security desk with a smile. No recognition. No witnesses, except the cameras. Claire leaned back, exhaled. She plugged in a small black flash drive, labeled it in pen. Let the truth speak. Then, without hesitation, drag the clips onto the drive, each moment, each kindness, each quiet proof. The world had judged Daniel by whispers, but she had something louder. Now, proof wrapped in quiet honor, caught on film. And this time, his story would not be so icily rewritten. The executive boardroom was polished, perfect, every chair aligned, every glass of water identical. 8 suits sat in a row, murmuring about quarterly projections and PR optics, the way people do when they believe the world moves only through charts and metrics. Claire stood at the head of the table, a small flash drive in hand. "We're not here to discuss numbers," she said, voice even. "We're here to discuss truth." One man shifted in his seat. "Is this about the janitor again?" Claire's eyes didn't blink. "His name is Daniel Cole." The room quieted. Another woman sighed. "Claire, no one's questioning your judgment. But appearances," she cut in, "appearances are exactly the problem." She inserted the flash drive into the laptop. The screen behind her lit up. First clip. Daniel fixing a broken cart quietly, efficiently. Second, offering his own gloves to a temp worker who came unprepared. Third, scrubbing lobby floors during a snowstorm long after his shift had ended. Fourth, helping an elderly woman carry her groceries to the building entrance without saying a word. No narration, no edits. Just action. Claire turned to face them. This is who he is when no one's watching. She clicked the final file. It was Hazel's piano performance. The silent crowd. Daniel, standing at the edge, pride written across his face like light. A hush fell over the room. Claire let it linger. Then said firmly, "This is the man you all doubted." No one spoke, no one moved, because when truth walks in, even polished rooms have to listen. Daniel walked into the building Monday morning, expecting another quiet shift, another invisible day. He passed the front desk. The usual nod. No whispers this time, just eyes that looked directly at him. A receptionist smiled, small but real. Odd, as he approached the staff hallway. Something pulled him off his routine path. A laminated paper posted on the bulletin board caught his eye. Staff realignments effective immediately. He scanned it casually, not expecting anything, then paused. Facilities manager D. Cole. He blinked. Read it again. No mistake. Confused. He turned down the hallway toward the storage rooms, but a maintenance tech intercepted him with a grin. "Congrats, boss," he said, clapping Daniel on the back. "Your new office is upstairs." Daniel stared. "My what?" The tech just pointed. "End of the 3rd floor, left side." Still in disbelief, Daniel took the elevator up. Doors opened to a quieter wing. Warmer lighting, fewer footsteps. He walked down the corridor until he reached a frosted glass door and stopped there. In clean gold lettering, Daniel Cole, facilities manager. His breath caught. He touched the name, traced it with his fingertips, like it might vanish. Then he noticed a folded piece of paper taped, just beneath the plaque. In Claire's handwriting, it was always yours. Some people just needed time to catch up. Daniel closed his eyes. Behind this door wasn't just an office. It was everything he thought had been stolen by time, by class, by silence, a space with his name, a space earned, not given. And this time, there was no mop in his hand, only a key. The door opened with a soft click. Hazel stepped inside first, wide-eyed backpack, bouncing as she spun slowly in the center of the room. "All yours?" she asked, her voice full of awe. Daniel followed, still adjusting to the idea himself. It was a modest office, but to them, it might as well have been the top floor of a skyscraper. A desk with drawers, 2 chairs, a small shelf lined with maintenance logs, a window that looked over the city's edge, sunlight spilling through like something holy. Hazel tiptoed over to the desk and ran her fingers along its smooth surface. "It doesn't even squeak," Daniel chuckled. "High-end executive wood grain, I think." She slid into the guest chair, legs too short to touch the floor, swinging them back and forth. He opened a drawer, expecting pens or folders, but it was empty. Hazel peeked into another one. "Daddy." He turned. She held up a miniature box of chocolates, individually wrapped, tucked neatly beside a small sticky note with a hand-drawn smiley face. She gasped. "Someone left you treasure." Daniel laughed, not the tired kind, the full kind, the kind he hadn't let out in years. Hazel popped one chocolate into her palm and held it up to him like a toast. "To my dad," she said proudly, the manager. He raised an imaginary glass. And to the girl who saw it before anyone else did, she giggled, then leaned back in the chair, chocolate melting between her fingers. "You're a real boss now," she whispered. Daniel sat behind the desk and looked out the window. No mop, no shame, no shadows, just light. Later that week, Daniel walked through the lower-level halls, clipboard in hand, checking supply stock. He paused outside the locker room, where muffled voices drifted through the door. A young temp worker stood inside, tugging awkwardly at an oversized uniform shirt, sleeves too long, collar stiff. His hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with the buttons. Daniel stepped in. "You knew." The kid, barely 20, fresh-faced and nervous, straightened immediately. "Why, yeah, first shift. They didn't have my size." Daniel nodded. "Been there?" The kid looked down. "I'm not trying to mess up, sir. I really need this job." Daniel smiled gently. "Then don't worry. You already showed up. That's the hardest part." He walked over to his old locker. Number 7, still his, but no longer needed. Inside hung the uniform he wore on his first day. The sleeves still rolled, the fabric still carrying quiet. He took it off the hook and walked back. "Try this one," he said, handing it to the young man. The temp hesitated. "I can't take your—" "You're not taking anything," Daniel interrupted. "You're stepping in, and I'm stepping up." The kid accepted it carefully, holding it like it meant more than just cotton and stitching. Daniel added softly, "Maybe it'll bring you purpose." The young man blinked, nodding, eyes suddenly glassy. Daniel turned to leave, but before the door shut behind him, he heard the kid whisper under his breath, "Thank you." Sir Daniel didn't stop walking, but he smiled, because this time, he wasn't the one being lifted, he was the one lifting the school. Auditorium buzzed with low chatter, parents fidgeting with programs, toddlers squealing in the aisles. Paper snowflakes hung from the ceiling, and folding chairs lined the rows with barely enough space to breathe. Daniel sat in the 3rd row, hands clasped, watching the small stage. Hazel peeked from behind the curtain in her powder blue dress, the same one from the party. Pressed and perfect again. "She's next," whispered a teacher. Daniel nodded, heart thudding. The principal took the mic. "Our final performance tonight, a very special solo by Hazel Cole." The lights dimmed. Hazel stepped onto the stage, tiny but certain. Her shoes echoed softly as she crossed to the piano. Bench dot she sat, took a breath, and played. The first note was shy, then the second, stronger. Her fingers moved with grace and something older than her years. Something passed down note by note from her mother's hands to hers. The room stilled. Parents leaned forward. Even the restless children quieted. Daniel's eyes shimmered, not just with pride, but with grief, joy, memory. The song wasn't flashy. It wasn't even complete. but it was hers and hers alone. When she finished, there was a heartbeat of silence, then applause, gentle, growing. Real dot, Daniel stood. Clapping through the ache in his chest, Hazel looked out from the stage and found him in the crowd. But she wasn't the only one watching. Near the back of the auditorium, Claire stood, coat still on, eyes glassy. When the lights rose again, Hazel rose from the bench. A bouquet of yellow lilies now rested quietly at her feet. No card, no name, just a gesture that said, "You are seen." To Dot, the coffee shop near Lexington Towers was nearly empty that morning. Quiet jazz playing low, the scent of cinnamon and dark roast thick in the air. Daniel stirred his cup slowly. Across from him, Claire sat in a gray sweater, hair loose, no makeup, no clipboard, just her and a paper cup. "You didn't have to come to the recital," Daniel said. "I wanted to," she replied. He nodded, eyes scanning the window beside them. "You didn't have to bring flowers either." She smiled. Hazel deserved them. There was a long pause, not awkward, just full. Claire broke it first. "You know, when I first walked into your wife's piano studio, I was a nervous wreck. No rhythm, no talent, just pressure. My parents thought music would make me well-rounded." Daniel smirked. "And did it?" "No," she said, "but your wife did." Daniel looked up at her. Claire sipped her coffee, then added quietly, "She used to talk about you sometimes. The way you'd sit outside her lessons, humming along like you knew the notes before they came." Daniel chuckled under his breath. "I didn't. I just liked pretending. She said you kept her grounded. Said you were the only person who didn't want her to be perfect, just present." Claire met his eyes then, her voice gentler. "You gave her that gift. And now, you've given it to me?" Daniel shook his head. "I didn't do anything." She smiled softly. "You reminded me who I was raised to be." They sat in silence again, both sipping coffee, the morning sun warming the window between them. Not boss and employee, not benefactor and beneficiary, just two people grieving the same woman in very different ways and healing, quietly, together. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, cream-colored and tucked inside Daniel's office mailbox. There was no return address, just his name, Mr. Daniel Cole, written in blue ink, bold and elegant. He opened it slowly, careful not to tear the edge. Inside was a letter, and a second, smaller envelope marked Hazel Cole Personal Daniel unfolded the letter first. "Mr. Cole, enclosed is confirmation of a full educational scholarship awarded to Hazel Cole. It covers primary through secondary schooling at the Crestfield Academy for the Arts. All tuition, materials, instruments, uniforms, and transportation will be covered. No application required." Daniel's hands trembled. He read it again, and again. His eyes dropped to the final line, "In honor of a teacher who once believed in both of you." He pressed the letter to his chest, the paper catching the rise and fall of his breath. Hazel's envelope lay beside it, smaller, decorated with hand-drawn music notes and tiny stars. Inside was a golden card, embossed. "Welcome to Crestfield. Piano program, class of 23-9. Tears welled in his eyes before he could stop them. He sat in the quiet of his office, sunlight pouring in through the window. Warming the desk that once felt like a stranger's, he looked at Hazel's crayon drawing still, pinned to his wall, the one where she had drawn them both on a stage. Beneath lights. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a memory just waiting to happen. The new apartment wasn't fancy, but it had windows in every room. And this time, curtains. Hazel picked them out herself, soft yellow with tiny suns stitched along the edges. They glowed when the afternoon light hit them just right. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching her twirl in the living room, arms out, dress catching, air. Laughter echoed off the freshly painted walls, the kind of laughter that had been missing for too long. A casserole baked in the oven, real food, not crackers and make-believe. The scent drifted through the room, warm and grounding. On the counter sat a glass jar, not for coins, not for rent money, but for something else. Daniel opened his wallet, the worn edges still holding memory. He reached in and pulled out the copper penny, the one Hazel gave him at the bus stop so many weeks ago. He rolled it in his palm, still warm. Somehow, he dropped it into the jar. The soft plink echoed louder than it should have. He smiled, then picked up a marker, uncapped it, and wrote a single word on the side of the jar in bold. Uneven letters, FITH. Hazel peeked around the corner. What's that for? He looked at her and grinned. For the things we believe in before they happen. She nodded, serious. Then we better make room. Daniel walked to the window. Pulling the curtain aside, the city outside hadn't changed, but everything inside this home had dot. And as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, painting gold across the floor, he whispered under his breath, "We're okay now." And for the first time in years, he knew it was true. The rain had returned, gentle this time, not angry like before. It pattered against sidewalks and umbrellas. Slicking the city streets in silver, Daniel stepped out of Lexington Towers. Now in his pressed work shirt, not the old one, not oversized, but his own, badge clipped clean, shoulders back. He held Hazel's drawing folded in his coat pocket, not because he needed to see it anymore, but because it reminded him who he was. As he reached the corner, he spotted her, a young woman in a blazer, clutching a folder to her chest. Her umbrella had snapped in the wind, and taxis kept passing her by. Her face wore the panic of someone late, someone trying hard not to fall apart. Daniel slowed. For a moment, he was back in the rain. Back in that moment, no name, no expectations, just instinct. He stepped forward. "Need a hand?" he asked gently. The woman turned, startled. "I don't have any cash. My phone died. I'm just trying to get to an interview across town." Daniel reached into his wallet, thinner these days, but still steady, and pulled out a folded bill. Crisp, dry, he handed it to her without pause. Her eyes widened. "Why would you?" He smiled. "Because someone did it for me once." She tried to speak, but the taxi slowed behind her. Its light flipped on. "Go," Daniel said. "It's just a ride. What you do with it, that's what matters." She climbed in. Stunned, he tapped the roof twice as the cab pulled away, then turned. Rain fell steady on his shoulders. He walked on, quiet, steady, full. And over his shoulder, he called without looking back. "I've got you. Just pay it forward someday."